Hello and welcome along to Wired Foresight. I'm Greg Williams. I'm the editor of Wired. Today's session is part of an ongoing series of conversations with leading figures and innovative thinkers in business, science, technology, academia and policy to really investigate the fast-paced changes the world is currently undergoing, to explore how the world will be shaped in the coming months and years, and most importantly, to understand how we can prepare for those changes. We intend that our live virtual briefings are punchy, they're top-level sessions with a guest speaker on a key topic or theme. Each starts with a brief introduction from the speaker, goes into a discussion with the editor, and is followed by a Q&A featuring your questions. We know you're busy, we know you want concise, authoritative briefings, so these discussions will last roughly 25 minutes. Today, we investigate the nature of the AI ecosystem, where it's growing, where the general purpose technology can be best applied for real impact, and where the opportunities are for organizations to gain competitive advantage. We'll also explore the differences in the localized responses to the coronavirus pandemic across the world and how some emerging markets are applying innovative ways to solve region-specific challenges with AI. I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker today, Kate Kallot. Kate is the Director of AI Ecosystems for the Machine Learning Group at Arm. Her work focuses on the creation of disruptive AI applications and using the power of AI to drive social change. She works with UNICEF to use AI to solve challenges communities are facing, such as improving access to safe, clean, affordable water in urban areas. Kate, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk about this because obviously there's been so many kind of interesting developments over just the past few months and weeks with the coronavirus situation. But I'd love to just start, if you could maybe give us an overview, how you think about the AI ecosystem as it is right now.
Yeah, it's very important to redefine what we see as ecosystem, because I think a lot of people, when we talk about ecosystem, a lot of people have different definition of what it is. But the way I see the technology ecosystem is when you build a system, a solution, take for example a mobile phone, it's going to be really important to build IP and hardware processors which are going to make your phone faster, more efficient, and so on and so forth. But it's going to be even more important to make sure that all the components, the peripherals, the algorithms that you need to build a whole system, a whole mobile, are going to work really well with the hardware. And that's how we see ecosystem, and that's how I personally see ecosystem. It's not just about the hardware or the IP, it's all about making sure that everything that needs to go on top of it works efficiently, coupled with the IP to deliver a great solution to the market. So I kind of see my job as two things, and it's actually two sides of the same coin. On one side is to partner with the strategic partners, framework providers in AI, but also algorithm partners, people who are going to build smart cameras and things like that. But also at the same time, using what we create with those strategic partners to give developers the keys to try and innovate and push the boundaries of what's possible with technology. So on one side, the strategic partners, and on the other side, the developer relations, which kind of both go hand in hand.
Sure, and what you've described is obviously a really kind of wide-ranging series of implementations and series of use cases for AI. You're talking to customers in pretty much every vertical, from automotive to utilities to healthcare security. Give us a sense of what the big trends are that you're seeing in terms of how AI is going to be implemented in the coming years.
So yeah, you're actually spot on. So within ARM, we have the chance that the technology we're building is being used by more than 70% of the global population. That's more than 5 billion people, right? That are interacting with an ARM-based device on a daily basis. It's incredible the impact that this technology has on the lives of people.
Yeah.
So that makes my job really, really interesting. But when you look at the AI, when you look at AI and machine learning today, it's important to see how the landscape is being defined. So you have everything that's being done in the cloud, which we call cloud computing, but then you also have what you see at the very end, and what people are going to be able to have in their hands and experience. And that's what we call the endpoint. Sometimes people call it edge, but actually we think about it as the endpoint. Things like your smartphone, some wearables, things that you will be able to interact with on a daily basis. And then if you look at everything that's in the middle, in between the cloud and the endpoint, that's where you have kind of the edge. And what I call the network edge. So it's this concept of, we call this distributed machine learning. So it goes all the way from the cloud down to the endpoint. And that's how we look at it. What's going to be really interesting in the coming years is to see how fast and how easy we're going to be we're going to be able to move from the cloud to the endpoint, back and forth. And I think that's what's going to drive some of the biggest innovation in AI over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because obviously, we have to sort of think about the broadness of this and also the tech capability. In terms of the actual capability, many organizations think that they have to develop AI in-house, right? They have to have some kind of IP or whatever. But this just obviously isn't the case. I'd love you to maybe describe sort of some examples of how people can maybe think about establishing strategic alliances within this enormous ecosystem that you're painting a picture of.
Sure. So it's true that a lot of organizations think that they have to develop this in-house AI capabilities, but then where do you position yourself? Are you going to be AI hardware, or are you going to be AI software? Actually, there is no right answer, because both go hand in hand. And that's why you need to establish some strategic alliances to be able to deliver a full solution.
Yeah.
So that's on one side. But on the other side, there is something that I feel like sometimes people really underestimate, and it's the power of community, which is also part of the ecosystem. I see the developer community as an opportunity to drive innovation and build use cases based on your technology that no one has thought about before. Even your engineers haven't thought about before. And for me, it's more minds, more people trying to drive innovation and trying to solve some of the world's most complex problems, some of the technology more complex problems. So when you look at the AI landscape, for a long time, innovation was coming out of research. So you have all these big AI conferences with thousands and thousands of research papers published, and using what these researchers are doing, pushing that into potentially productizing that and pushing that into the hands of developers, and giving developers the ability and the bandwidth to innovate is something that I think is going to be key when you're going to try to drive some strategic alliance to build an AI ecosystem. You don't have to do everything by yourself. You need to be able to harvest all the innovation that's being done outside to be able to drive, to be able to build innovative solution. I can take as an example a new consortium that has been created last year called TinyML, tiny machine learning it means. And the beauty of TinyML is that it's pretty much the hardware and software industry coming together along with the research industry and developers and trying to revolutionize what's possible on power and resource constrained devices. So when I was talking about pushing what's being done in the cloud down to the endpoint, TinyML is all about making it easy to deploy and embed machine learning in billions of IoT devices that have been deployed in the world today. But that wouldn't have been possible if there was not this consortium of different actors in the industry. So the hardware and software industry together, the research and the developer community. And that's really beautiful. And that's what's really exciting about working in ecosystem, is that you get to interact with so many different actors, so many different bodies who are all working together to solve some of the technology's most complex problems.
It does seem like there's real rapid advances happening in AI at the moment. Certainly, we are long out of the kind of like the fabled AI winter. But in terms of developing this broader ecosystem we're discussing, where do you see the biggest challenges on making progress in the coming years?
So I often say to my team that the most complicated thing with ecosystem is not what to do, but what to not do.
Yeah.
There are just so many things we could do, so many people we could talk to, so many actors we could work with, that it's really difficult to know where to start. We could easily do a million things and not have any impact, and do 10 things and have a great impact on the world. So how do you make sure that you work within, you work with technology that are going to have the largest impact? And that's the most difficult thing to figure out. But that's where actually the developer community can help you, because if you choose to solve 5 problems and you have another 10 that you don't have the bandwidth to be able to solve, that's where you can use the developer community to help you solve some of these. I could take as an example, recently I've worked on a developer competition with the UN development program, with ARM and also other actors in the industry, and it was all about giving developers opportunities to come up with solutions that could help protect people with regards to COVID, detect COVID, but also be applicable not only in a developed world, but also in a developing world, and have an impact worldwide. And it's incredible the type of solutions that we've incoming, things like social distancing badge. So for example, it's a badge that triggers a little sound, a little alarm if somebody is coming too close to you. Or even smart pulse oximeters and things like that. It's just been incredible to see the response developers have come up with. And it's just it's something that we as technologists sometimes don't think about. So it's really important to make sure that we harvest all this imagination that developers have, and they have to give to us as well.
Sure, and we want this ecosystem to be open, because that's the fastest way to drive innovation. But obviously, security is a big concern for consumers. How do we grow that ecosystem while also ensuring that there is, security for consumers and also a respect for privacy?
I see security and privacy, I think that we need to think about at the foundational layer. I often compare it to writing a book. Mm-hmm. When an author is going to write a book, most likely he's going to have the ending in his mind, right? So when you build technology, you have to have the same mindset. You cannot just build an IP to build an IP and just think that people are going to figure out everything that comes on top of it. You need to build an IP by having security as a core principle of this design, and make sure that whatever additional software algorithm security layer that's being put on top of it will work really, really well with the IP. And that's kind of how we think about it, us at ARM. We do make a point to embed some of these core principles, such as privacy, security, as foundational layers when we design IP. So it's not an afterthought. It has to be thought through at the beginning and when you start designing new technology.
I'd love to get your thoughts on the new types of interfaces that we're, encountering these. There's so much voice-based interfaces now. Obviously, we're looking at the rise of computer vision. Do you think we're moving away from the screen and we're seeing a kind of a phasing out of keyboards as our kind of encounter with compute going to be a very different thing in the coming years?
I see a lot of when we talk about AI, people think, oh, well, if we create new type of interfaces, all the others are going to get phased out. And I often compare it to when online shopping came into the picture.
Right.
We first thought that physical shopping would get phased out, but it's still not the case. And it's the same for Kindle. When Kindle came into the picture, people thought that physical books and bookstores will get phased out, but it's not the case. Actually, what online shopping and Kindle have done for retail and reading is enhance our experience. And that's what AI is bringing today to interactions and interfaces. It's an enhancement of experience. So if you look at interaction with the screen, we now have computer vision is enabling us to have interaction based on movements, gestures. Natural language processing and natural language understanding are enabling us to have interaction based on voice, on speech. So this is not to phase out the traditional keyboard and screen, but it's actually to enhance our experience with our screen and our keyboards. And us as a consumer, this is what AI and technology is enabling us to do. It's just all about enhancing our consumer experience and enhancing the way we interact with technology today.
So I'd love to also get your thoughts on the pandemic and how AI has been used during the last few weeks. I know you've got a very strong interest in tech for social good.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen the pandemic amplifying inequality. What role do you think technology can play in the recovery and working to remove inequality that we've seen amplified over the past few months?
So there are a couple of threads to this question. The first one, with regards to the pandemic specifically, I think one of the things this pandemic has given us is an opportunity, us as technologists, to go and figure out ways to apply our technology for the greater good and to enhance the lives of people. And when I see the difference in responses that have come out when the coronavirus pandemic started, it's just been incredible. You have companies in the US, in the UK, research companies that have worked onto sequencing the first COVID genome. And they did that based on AI. You have the research community that has come together, research and healthcare communities that have come together to create a neural network called COVIDNet, which identifies coronavirus based on chest X-rays.
Okay.
So the healthcare community has been fitting X-rays, and the AI research community have been working on strengthening this model. But then on the other side, it's been really interesting to see and really amazing to see the response coming from emerging markets such as Africa. For example, there is a couple of engineers from the Polytechnic School in Senegal who've worked on building a medical robot, to lessen the load on healthcare workers. You've seen things in Rwanda where they went completely cashless, and they were actually prepared to go cashless because they're fostering this digital economy. They believe that innovation and digital tools are going to help them drive forward innovation in their country. And the government has worked with telecom operators to waive the transaction fees on mobile payment and encourage people to pay with their mobile. They've also used, we've also seen locally assembled drones to help public awareness on the right gestures and measures to prevent the disease to spread. And it's interesting to see that sometimes we've seen some sort of reverse engineering coming from more developed countries. So in Ghana, they've been using drones to transport samples to testing sites. The US have used when the US saw the great response and the results that using these particular drones to transport samples to testing site have been providing, they've decided to use the exact same drones for similar tasks in the US. So you see some sort of reverse engineering coming from the more developed world into emerging markets. So this, in all, really, what this pandemic has given us as technologists is an opportunity to go and innovate and see how we can use the essence of the technology we're building, not only to drive future innovations such as autonomous driving cars and things like that, but also understand how this same technology can be applied into helping us fight this pandemic.
Yeah, it's been interesting the last few months just seeing the amount of innovation coming out of various places in the world, simply because we've had the opportunity to really rethink things, and particularly around automation and robotics, as you point out. So we've got a whole load of questions coming in. Just one final one from me, if that's all right, Kate. Can you give us a sense of what you think the next big transformational change is going to be, that's going to be driven by AI? What do you see as the really kind of impactful change that's going to happen in, the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, something in that time frame?
So if you're asking me when we're going to see AI in pencils, I can't tell you. I don't know about this.
No AI in this.
No AI in this, yeah. But what I can tell you is my own perspective on this. And I think for a long time, I was thinking as technology as a drive for research and innovation. But actually, recently, when I started to work on AI ecosystem, moving from building products to supporting the global ecosystem, what I've realized is technology is actually just an enabler. And when you build technology, you need to think about the people this technology is going to serve. So the way I see the next 3 to 5 years, big trends in AI is not in terms of new technology bits that are going to come in the market. It's actually in terms of how existing and future technologies are going to be able to be applied to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. If we could use AI and data science to predict likeliness of floods in Malawi and help prevent millions of people of being displaced during a big event like this, can we use AI to solve even more complex problems? And that's where I'm going to be on the lookout. How is the technology we're building here able to be applied on the African continent, on other emerging markets, and helping solve some of the world's most pressing problems? So that's where I'm going to focus, and that's where I think the true innovation is going to come, rather than the next hot, big piece of technology that will be put out in the market.
Okay, great. Well, looking forward to seeing how that develops. And maybe, Kate, if you've got time, we could maybe go and take a look at the Q&As, the 2 or 3 questions. Sure. There's one at the top there, actually, that does touch on a little bit about sort of, what you've just been discussing in terms of what's happening in the developing world.
Yes. So the question is, what kind of initiatives could we develop in Africa to see AI developers, AI business partners increase there? One of the things I've realized working with African developers is that it's very scattered. Africa is a big continent. It's not one country, it's a big, big continent with over 1 billion people. So there are a lot of people, a lot of technology, and not a lot of innovative minds to bring together. And we've seen recently the apparition of communities like Zindi, for example, which is a community of data scientists and is really trying to bring all these data scientists on the continent together to work on solving local challenges. So I think one of the things and the initiatives that can be done is similar to Zindi, is fostering that community and really trying to bring that community, engineering, developers, data scientists together to try and solve some of the world's pressing challenge. And for us as technologists and as big technology companies, it's going to be easier to reach out to these developers if they are all centered around a couple of communities.
Okay. Maybe you could take a look at the questions that are coming in, Kate, and see if there's anything that particularly interests you in talking about.
Sure. What is the biggest hurdle to using AI in everyday life? An interesting thing is what people often don't know is that the device which is processing the most of AI today is actually our mobile phone. So when we think about AI and hurdles of using this technology every day, we're actually already doing it. And most of the AI workloads today are being processed on our mobile phones. So it's already happening. If you take smartphone as a predictor of what's going to happen in technology and AI in the next couple of years, is the perfect example. I think the moment we will actually get to the point where AI will be embedded everywhere is when we will interact with it like we're interacting with our smartphone, but we won't be able to even notice that it's being done by AI, which is what's happening with smartphones today.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I think is the hurdle to using AI every day. It's actually already being done.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Kate, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation, and just so excited to see how the ecosystem develops over the next few years. Thank you so much for your time. It was great to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Greg, for having me. Really excited to be here.
Thank you. And if you enjoyed the session, please do check out the rest of the Wired Foresight series, which include discussions with Herman Narula, CEO and co-founder of Improbable, on gaming in virtual worlds, Angela Saini, who's the author of Superior, about the return of race science, and Rana El-Kaoubi, co-founder and CEO of Affectiva, on bringing emotional intelligence to tech. All are available at wired.co.uk. And please do check out our virtual conferences that are coming up. We have Wired Health Tech on September the 22nd, and Wired Smarter, our annual business conference, October 13th to the 15th this year. In the meantime, thank you again to Kate for joining us. Stay well, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Thanks so much.